Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. So welcome to week five, class one, right? And today we're going to be looking at form validation in Flutter. And well, if we're able to finish up, we'll get to also look at user inputs, right? Let's see how that goes, right? So yeah, form validation, right? This, of course, this is one of the things you're going to be using a lot using most of the applications. You get to use forms, right? So let's see how um, Flutter actually implements, the whole form validation. So part of what you're going to be, part of the objectives, right, for this is going to understand the basics of form validation in Flutter, learn how to use Flutter's built-in validation techniques and mechanisms, right, and then implementing custom validators, right, that we can actually reuse. Have to create a validator that we can be using um, various classes. And then, of course, how to manage a form state and handle submission effectively. So I think by the end of this class, we should be able to, yeah, we're able to say that we have actually, gone through these objectives and we have achieved them. So let's just get right into that. Okay, so first thing, so I'm basically going to, I'm still going to reuse the projects that we have actually been using, but I'm not going to create a new application. Now you can decide to create a new one, right? That's also going to be fine, right? But I'm just going to reuse what I have. That's why you can actually see my device here. So I'm just going to reuse it so I don't have to take a lot of time in setting up. So form validation basically is, of course, it's actually a very essential feature because it helps you to ensure that the data that is submitted by your users is correct and it is secure, right? So in Flutter, form validation, you can actually achieve it using two basic widgets. We have the form widgets and the text form field widgets, along with some validation what functions, right? So a form in Flutter is created using what's called a form widget, right? Now, basically, the form widget just is just like a container, right, for your form fields, right, such as the text form field I just talked about, right, which we're going to be using. So each of these form fields has can actually have what we call a validator function, and the purpose of the validator function is just to check the input of the what user to make sure it actually what is in line with what is expected, right? A typical example is let's say an email, right? When the user types in an email, we need to be sure that that email matches, what an email should actually what look like, right? So that's basically what we are going to be doing, right? So let's start. I'm going to create a separate file that we're going to use for that. Let me just call it form. I'll call it form.dart, right? Now, what I'm going to do, so our form is just going to be remember we talked about stateful and stateless what widgets, right? Now, our form now is going to be a stateful widget. So I'm going to make it a stateful widget now, right? And the essence is now, of course, we can use stateless, but that would mean take us to talking about state management, which we are not there yet, right? So for now, I'm going to use stateful management, right? So that the essence of that is because the UI is going to change its what form based on right, a certain what input, right? So we're going to use stateful widgets to actually what solve that, right? So let's start. So the short form, right? Now when you do STL, right, it should actually pop up. Yes, mine is still loading, right? But I can just create it directly. I'll say class. So let's just call it form. So try not to use keywords. So I'll say form demo, right? I'll just call my form demo and it extends the stateful widget, right? Stateful widget. Okay, so I think okay, so sorry, my so this is basically that now. But one thing about extending, of course, we have to override certain methods, right? Which of course one of the major methods you're going to be overriding is the build method. But in stateful widget, there are still some other things that we actually need, which you don't really manually have to do it, but for now I'm just going to manually write that because I think my um system is lagging a bit. So I'm going to have an override, and what I'm basically going to be overriding is the state, right? The state aspect of this what's called demo class, which we use. You have some that, but when you actually just generate it by doing STF, right? Typing STF, it should actually show you some options, and you click enter, you actually just see that. So from demo state, right? And then we call the create state function, right? Um, yep, and then back to calling our form demo, yeah, form demo state. Okay, so yeah, so this is basically what we are overriding, and then um, we now have another class, right? We can have another class here where we now the class which is the actual what home state, this is demo state, the form demo what state. So this thing happens when, like I said, so the system is lagging a bit, which mine is. So let me just check if uh my system is freed up. Okay, good. So yeah, so STL gives you that, STF will actually give you that. So this was basically what I was just trying to generate myself, which of course you don't actually have to use. So let me just do this so you don't take a lot of time, right? So yeah, okay. So yeah, I'm just gonna change this. I don't actually need a form for now. Let me just. I just want to set up some basic stuff, right? Just to be sure that we are on the same. We just call this form demo. So let me wrap this in the center, right? So now I want, since I'm using the same, application or project, right? I'm just going to change this. So we are done with this. So I don't want to actually have to load this up. So I'll just change the first page, the page that should actually, be loaded when we run our application, and then have to just import that. Okay, so I'm just clean it up. So yeah, I'm going to just rerun this instead of doing a hot reload. I'll just restart the application so that it can actually open up this form demo, because this is where we're going to be building our form. So yeah, I think that shouldn't take too long. Okay, yeah, so we have this, or another way, instead of actually using it, well, this is also another way, but let's just work with this. Now, so what we're going to do, so let's see, on our main, we have this, okay, and then the home. So yeah, so let's come here. So instead of returning the center, right, I can just return a scaffold because I kind of don't like this black. So return the scaffold, right? And the scaffold actually doesn't have the styles. Um, hold on, sorry. What it has the body. Okay, so let's see. You know what? Let's do this from mixing things. Okay. I think yeah, I think I'm mixing up something. So we have build method. Yeah, I think we should be. So yeah, I think I'm missing this. Let's see. Right. So we get build. So yeah, field is on the scaffold. So for some reason, let's see, the method level is defined type for this type um naming this. So yeah, okay. So we did not have the material widget package. That was why, right? We didn't actually have that. So that's something to be very mindful of. So it has a body, so I can um just say center, which takes a child, and then let's just put the text. I just want to put this out of the way. Okay. Okay, so just going to do Control S. Yeah, so yeah, this looks better. Much better. Much better. Okay, so as I was saying, right? So the form, when you use a form widget to actually, create forms, right, in Flutter, and the form widget is basically just a container for your form fields, right? Just a container for your form fields. Now, this is basically how it looks like, right? This is basically how it looks like. So let's, instead of this text, right? I'll probably just use this for the one of the properties of this of the scaffold, right? Is an app bar. Okay, so this there. So and then this app bar takes its side. So okay, so this is the form widget, as you can see, and it takes what a child. Now for the child, we're going to, because we want a list, like I said, it's just a container, right? And your forms, where you're filling, let's say a login or a registration, you can have email, password. So it's just a list of what widgets. So we need like a list of what widgets. So since we need a list, I'm going to use a column because we want to arrange widgets, vertically. So I'm going to use a column, right? And of course, the column has a property or has it's called children, which takes a list of what widgets, which like I said, I can explicitly say widget here, or I can actually just, do without it, right? And just, start imputing my, widget. So this is where we're going to have our form fields, right? This is where we'll have our form fields. So let's save that and then be sure that we are actually on the same page, right? So yeah, this just goes here because that's our app bar. Okay, so one of the widgets we use, right, is what we call a text form field widget. Okay, a text form field what widget. So this is it, text form field, right? So here's a text form field was widget, and this is basically what we use for input. So, so what it does, it creates a form field that contains what a text field where the user can actually what type in, whatever he or she needs to actually what type in. So let's say with this particular widget, right, we want the user to be able to enter, let's say an email address, right? Let's say an email address. So there are a lot of properties, a lot of things you can actually do, with the text form field. When you scroll up, you see it has a lot of behavioral properties that you can actually just pass in, right? So these are things you can actually play around with, right? Of course, I won't be able to use everything in this class, but I'll just use the basic ones that you will, almost always make use of. right? So one of them is a decoration. So before I actually pass in the decoration, let me just save this and then let's see what this gives us, right? So you can see this line here, right? You can see this line. So this actually is what an input. When I click on it, right, you can see I can just type in stuff, right? But nothing is being done, right? It doesn't actually do anything. Okay. So one of the things we can do is, kind of give it a bit of decoration, right, for it to look well and make use of the input decoration, right? So just by putting this input decoration, we just say that kind of just want you to see how things go. This is that, and then one of the properties of the input decoration, right, is a label, right? So label basically just tells the what's it called? Tells the user what is expected, rather. So we use a label text. So it basically just tells the user what is actually expected of the user, right? So for this, the label text it expects a string, right? So I'm just going to say email. So to give you this gray kind of listen. So you should see. So this just gives you what the label. Now there is label. There's also hints. So the label goes to the top, right? We're going to do some more decoration on this, but hints actually stays in the input field. So let's say we have the hint text, which I could just say enter your email. So of course, in the end, you get to decide what you want to actually what make use of, right? You get to decide what you actually want to make use of. Now, the hints, so this is it, right? So when I start typing, the hint goes away, right? But when I haven't typed anything, so it just shows you, okay, what it shows the user what the user should actually what type in. Now, of course, you can give this hint a style, right? Because right now, one thing about hints should actually look, they shouldn't actually be, they should have a very low contrast. They shouldn't just pop out that way, right? Of course, there's a property called the hint style, right? Which I'll make use of my text style, and then I could say, this is basically me just wanting to style the hint. I want the hint to actually not, it shouldn't pop out this way. So so there are properties, color, this, a lot of things, but I'm going to use, let's say font style, font weight. Let's use font weight, right? And then I'll say font weight, uh, font weight, sorry. Okay, font weight dot. So we have bold, we have normal, we have a weight of 100, 200. So for example, let me just pick 200 and then just save that, right? So you can see it's what lighter, right? So you can actually just, play around with, the fonts and everything. I could decide to say, okay, fine, you know what? I want it to be normal, just normal, but the color, right? The color should, be kind of not, let's say, I'll just say colors dot uh so let's see gray. Let's see what we have for gray. Let's see what gray would look like. So in the end, it's just dependent on so this is it. So it depends on how your whatever design you're trying to what implement, right? Now, so yeah, that's just one thing, right? Another thing, another property or another thing you should pass in. So we are done with decoration. So I'll just come here, right? Make sure you index properly. Now we have a property called keyboard type. So this should determine what's, for example, now the keyboard type, what you're seeing here, you're seeing a mix of numbers and letters, right? Now, of course, in email address, right, you should give the user that's that's the keyboard type such that you can actually he or she can impute a valid email. And of course, people's emails can contain both numbers. Some person's emails contain other characters, right? Now there is we use the class called text input type. So you can see we have a lot here. We have dot number with options, dot date, time, email address, multi-line. So multi-line, let's say, think of when you want to, when someone asks you about us, tell me about you. Of course, the user will be able to type a lot of things. So let's just see how, so let me start with text input type dot number, right? So assuming I say I want this to be number, right? What happens? So let's just reload this, right? Let's reload this and sorry, just close this. But okay, so you can see only number what shows up because I said, look, the valid input type, what I want the person to be able to impute should just be a number, right? I don't want word, I don't want characters, I don't want anything, just what a number, right? But of course, that's not the case. That's not what we want, except I just do something like this. Let me just duplicate this, and then I could say, so we have a lot of, this stuff actually just, so let me just clear out some of these things, right? You know, adding a course to improve performance, right? So yeah. Okay, so for this one, I could just say, okay, phone number. So this is now valid because we don't want the user to mistakenly type in a letter when using phone number, right? So here, I'll change this so there's a text input type called email address, right? So that means, okay, you're actually making sure that the user is going to just type in valid characters that makes up an email. Okay, so that's basically that. Okay, so coming to before we now, because we need to be able to do some validation, right? And I talked about the essence of validation, right? We need to make sure, right? We need to be out. We need to make sure that we check whatever the user is actually typing in to be sure that it is actually a valid input based on what is expected. So we are expecting a phone number. We're expecting an email address. We need to be sure that whatever, so when user types in that email address, we need to check that, look, this is actually a valid email address. I want to say valid email address. It's not like it doesn't check if the email address exists. No, it doesn't check if it exists. It checks if whatever you type actually conforms to the rule of what should make an email address. And there's a regular expression that we actually use to do that check. So let me just show you. First of all, well, we need to check. Okay, let's just do that. Let me not get ahead. Let's take it one step at a time. So every text form field has what's called a validator. Now, what a validator does, it does the whole concept, it just does what validation, and it's actually what it takes. It's actually a what function, right? It expects a function that will return something, right? That's basically what the validation actually does. So yeah, I'm going to just go with this. So first validation, we want to first of all check. So this value here, right, represents what the user actually is going to type in. Okay, it represents what the user actually is going to type in. So one thing I can actually just do, let's just test it, is I can check if the user doesn't type in anything. That means if the user doesn't type anything, that means it's empty, right? So I can say something like if value, right? Of course, value is going to be like it's a string dot is empty. Yeah, dot is empty. Sorry. Yeah. So if the value, right, is what empty, what do I want to do? I could just say let's can't be so let's say can because the receiver can be okay, yeah, because the receiver can be null, so it can't be unconditional report. So we just need to um either do sorry, think using null. I think that should okay, so let's see the properties. Okay, okay. So let's see what the quick fix we can do here. So replace this. Yeah, but that still doesn't work. So let's see. Okay, so yeah. So because the value can actually be null, it's possible for the user to not actually type in anything. It's possible that the user does not actually So that's what we're doing. What we're checking by making sure that we are prepared for a null value, because this value can actually be null. So not putting it here. When I put it here, I mean that I want to check that the whole expression can actually give a null. But no, it's not the expression we're looking at here. It's the fact that this value, right, which is what the user, and if you hover on it, you can see here that it's actually nullable, right? Meaning that it's possible that we get a null, it's possible we get nothing, because users can decide to just see a form. And of course, some of you, it may have happened to you mistakenly. You were filling form, you forgot to fill a particular thing, and then you clicked on submit. So it's very possible. So those are the kind of validations, those are the kind of things we're actually checking. So if the value is empty, I could just say print um, empty, right? Print empty. Now, but to check this, I need to be able to, so let's look at the actual process, which is what we usually do. You need to be able to click submit, right? You need to be able to click on submit, and then, we now get check if it was empty. So to be able to do that, it means that when I click on submit, somehow that means I am running a check. I'm checking the state of the form to know if everything is actually okay. So I'm checking, okay, the email, the text form field, the email, is everything okay there, right? The phone number, is everything fine, right? That's part of the validation. I need to first of all run a check to make sure that everything is okay. If everything is fine, then I carry out whatever action I want to when I click on that that button, which may be okay, is to create an account or to log in. So if I want to log in, I first of all check the email input, I check the password. When I make sure that everything is fine, if everything is okay, then go ahead to login. So let's just create a function to do that. I'm going to create a function to submit this, right? So it's going to be let's make it a private function, right? So I'm just going to call it submit. Now, this will bring us to, talking about what form state management. And basically what form state management is, right? It just involves, you validating the form and saving the input, right? You validate the form and then you save the input. So it uses a form key to access the form state, right? Let me just show you. So let me create a variable called is valid. We want to actually check. So I'm going to use a form key to actually check that, okay, everything is actually fine, right? I'm going to use a form key to check that everything is actually fine. So before that, I'm going to create an instance of that form key. I'm going to create an instance of the form key. Now, so final, let me call it form key, all right? So this is how we create that instance. Say global key, right? Global key, yeah, global key. Basically this, but we now have to pass in the form states. Okay, so you can see. So this basically what we're doing. We're just creating an instance of what's we call the global key, right? And we're passing it. Of course, it's actually checking the state of the form. I need one more variable. So let me just create a variable called is loading. I'm just going to use this to do some check. So I'll call it false for a start. Okay, so back here now in my submit function, I want to get the current state of the form. I want to get the current state of the form. And I'll do that by using my form key instance and then call the current state. and then I'll say current state dot what validate, right? So that's basically what I'm going to do. So let's see. Yeah, because the receiver can also be null. So which of the receiver? Let's see. I think let's see if it's this. Yeah, the current state. So what I'm going to now check is if I want to see if it is not valid, right? So I'm going to use this word operator. Of course, you should know this, right? So if not valid, so of course, whatever if this is not true, so that's basically what we're like saying. If it is not true, if it is not valid, right? If it is not valid, what do I want to do? I basically just want to what return, right? I'll just return. But of course, but if it is valid, right? If it is valid, then I will say form key dot current state dot save. So I'm just going to save the current what state of the form. And of course, some of you must have seen this. You must have actually seen this before, right? Where you're filling a form, and then for some reason you kind of step out or something, right? And then you're able to come back, right? You're able to kind of come back, and you still have the stuff you filled still there, right? That's basically the essence of what the word form states. So yeah, so back to this, because I'm going to actually make use of that form key, right? I'm going to make use of the form key here, right, to actually perform certain word operations. But let's just do a yeah, let's do an email validation here, right? So I'm going to do two things. I can do this together. Let me just do it together, right? That will just save us time, right? So let me cut this. So I want to do two checks. The first thing I want to check is if it is empty, right? And then the next thing is if it does not, conform to the expectation of what an email should actually look like, right? So we have an expression that actually what gives us that, and I'm just going to get this and paste there because you know I it's not something I want to start typing out one by one, right? So let me just paste this here. Yeah, it's kind of like a long one, right? So this is basically just a regular expression that actually validates that an email is actually an email, right? Just it validates an email is actually an email. But what we are actually trying to look at here is kind of like the not of it, like kind of you are trying to like negate it. So if it is not this regular, expression, right? If it's not this regular expression, then that means it's an issue. That means it's not a valid email. So this dot uh, has match. So we are checking that, okay, fine. This expression, this rule, this expression has a match, like it matches the value that the user is going to pass in, right? So if this not here, first of all, without this is actually going to this should return true because you're saying that it should match it. But of course, if it does not match, which is this, right? So this is like the negation of it, right? If it doesn't match, we need to return something, right? We need to return something. You can see this function has a nullable return type of string, so it expects that we return a string. So I'm going to say return it expects a string. So I'm just say enter a valid email. Okay, so yeah, so this is basically just this. So of course, at any point where, excuse me, none of this applies, we just return null. Okay, we'll just return what null. So let's run this. So I'm just going to save this and now, but we need a button because we need to be able to activate the submit function, right? Because our submit function is actually what checks for what validation. But now we're missing one key thing because for us to be able to use the key, right, we have to pass it into, we kind of actually have to use it in the form, right? You have to use it in the form. So what you do is in our form, it has a, let me take this, the proper indentation. Okay, so it has a key property, and the key property I'm going to pass in our form key. I'm going to pass in our form key. Okay, yeah, so that's basically what we're going to actually make use of. So it's going to use that form key to actually check that everything is going as it should. Yeah, but like I said, we need something to kind of handle that submission. So I'm going to create a button. I don't know if I've created a button for you guys. There are a lot of buttons. There's outline button, right? Like there's this outline, there's outline button, right? I think I've showed you guys this. Now, there is, I don't know if it's still, certain things have actually been are no longer in use. I think raised button is no longer used. So let's just use outline, but you can also, what's it called? Create your own button if you actually want, right? So, but let's just use outline. Yes, there are a lot of buttons. Maybe we'll find time to kind of play around with them, right? So on pressing this, I want to do something on pressing this button, right? What do I want to do? We just have one thing we want to do, so I can just do this instead. So basically, I just want to call the, submit, right? Yep. I just want to call the submit function, right? And for a child, that's basically just going to be text to show what should be on the button, right? Going to just say submit. So let me save that. Okay, so yeah, now I know the button is not fine, okay, but just bear with me. That's just what we're going to use for now, right? Okay, so now let's see. So this particular form field doesn't have any validation, just this, right? So when I click on, submit, you can see enter a valid email. Now, what's the first thing that you check here? The value here, you can see that it's actually empty, right? It's actually empty, which is what we did here. So if the value is empty, and of course the value is empty, we haven't actually typed anything, right? Or so let me try to just type in JG this, let's say this, right? And I click on submit. You see, we still have the same error. So just in case you feel that okay, maybe it hasn't changed, it's still the same thing. Let me do a reload, right, to clear out that state. Or I could have just clicked on the next input field, but that's fine. So let me just do a restart rather. Yep. Then yes. So when I say G does this, so you tell the user to actually type in an email, and probably this is what the person typed, right? And I click on submit. You can see it says enter a valid email. Why? Because it expects something at something. So if you can take your time to probably research this, right? So, but it expects, some kind of, expression where you have, either characters, letters, uppercase or whatever. These are your characters. These are symbols. It means that you can use a plus, a dash, an underscore, a question mark, and all the stuff. You can see um, A to Z, uppercase 0 to 9 takes numbers and all the likes, right? And then it needs this at, right? You have to put an at, so at something, and which could be between A to Z or small case or uppercase or 0 to 9, right? And then it needs a dot, so at something dot then of course whatever id.com.ng, but of course that should actually fall under what, just characters. So so this I could just say at um which is this part which expects A to Z characters, the small letter uppercase and then number. So what if it does not expect, what if I say at um this and then maybe I still say .com, right? So that's kind of just it. So of course, enter a valid email, right? So at, let's say, y.com. So you can see now it accepts that because it basically obeys this what rule, this regular expression that we have here, right? Okay, so yeah, so that's actually, validation. So at least this makes sure that your user does not, like I said, it does not validate if an email exists, right? It doesn't validate. It just makes sure that you are actually giving the right characters where you should actually want to give it. So it does not try to say, there's nothing like ghjj at y.com, okay? It doesn't do any endpoint calling where you have to check the back end if such an email address exists. No, no, no. This is just to make sure that the user is actually following the word rule that governs, creating an email address or typing in what is known as an email address. Now, that being said, I'm just going to do one more validation, and then part of your task will be I'll tell you some other validations that you should just try out. So let's for the number, let's see, let's create a validator which takes a value and then of course returns takes a value and then of course in the function returns a string. So let me just do this. So for the phone number, of course, first thing you must always check if it is empty, right? It's empty because you don't want the user sending in a, you don't want the user sending in passing any empty string. So I could say, okay, if it's empty, or so let's see what validation can someone just suggest what validation can we use for phone number, assuming someone actually inputting the phone number, right? What validation do you think you know we can use? So let's see. uh so if value is empty and that value dot let's see, hmm, value dot length, let's say is less than, sorry, um right. Okay, so let's just say return um phone number should be more than 10. So let me change that to if it's less than 11, right? That will make this valid because if you say less than 10, then it's not less than 10. Okay, so yeah, let's see this. Of course, or else fails needs to return no. Okay, so let's run this. So what are we checking here? First of all, we're checking if the value is empty, right? That is if the user didn't actually type anything here. So you notice when I click on submit now, you can see it shows me this error that phone number should be more than what 10, right? 10 characters, you can just add that because that's just so let's see. Um and of course the input type is number. So let me just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? So I want to submit at 9, but it's not letting me, right? It's still showing me that because of course we have just what 9 and we want it to be. So let's say if I add another number, let's say 0, right? Okay, I think I should use if the value of length is less than 11. Oh, okay. So yeah, we should actually be 10. So let me just say that, yeah. Um, yep. Okay, so yeah, we're good. We're good. Because 10 is it's actually 10, right? We have 10 numbers now, and 10 is not less than 10. So yeah, that now fails. So which passes this? So yeah, that's actually validation, right? Okay, let me see the chat. Thanks for persons. Okay, length, right? Okay. No, we can't say greater than 11 because that means you want more. You say if the value is greater than 11, we want to say, okay, so what that means you actually, your message has to now be different. So if you want to say greater than 11, right? I wonder what you want to return, and I wonder what exactly you would want the user to enter that should be, that you're doing that check. But of course, in the end, it's all about what you want to, check for, right? Because as far as contact is concerned, right, let's say Nigerian contact or whatever, right, it's usually between 10, 11, or if you want to factor in, the plus two, three, four, and all that, which, of course, that's a different thing, altogether. Okay. So that's actually, that's pretty much that for um, for form validation, right? I don't know, are there any questions before I move on to something else? Are there any questions before we move on? Any questions? I have about some more things that we will just cover quickly. Okay, so that's fine. Now let's add one more, and then let's look at some much more advanced stuff, which not really much, not really, really advanced, but it's more like let's look at interactive form fields, whereby your form fields can actually interact with each other, right? For instance, let's say you want to in creating a signing up, right? You put password and then you put confirm password. So we need those two form fields to interact with each other, right? Such that we want the second one, what we basically just want two of them to match, right? Okay, Daily, go ahead with your question before we start
Please,
that while I just,
um,
right?
I'm having
Yeah.
error with that is second is value from the submit function. It's telling me null. I've tried adding a null label, both types of null label, and it's still rejecting it.
Where
The
exactly?
if, the if in the
You,
submit function. Okay.
you didn't hear?
Yeah. I've added both, but it's rejecting it.
Okay. You know what to do. Okay, let me round this up.
It's not
Or have
rejecting it.
okay,
I think
that's
I'm
fine.
adding the second one at the front instead of at the back. That's why.
Okay, that's good. That's fine. When you add at the front, you're basically it's not a null check anymore. It is you giving like a negation, whereby plus becomes minus, true becomes false, that kind of thing, right? So that's if it's at the front. It's at if it's sorry, at that it's if it's behind. If it's in front, that's you actually what doing the whole null check stuff. Okay. So well, you can drop your hand now if that's sorted out. Okay, so let's assume let's see how two form fields can actually interact, right? So let me create another form field. This is going to be for password, right? Enter your password. So I'm just going to take this out. Then let's have another one. So this is going to be confirm password. I'll still say enter. Let us say enter your password also. So let me just save this and then let's see. Okay, so yeah, we have these two, right? Okay, so now, like I said, right, form fields can actually interact with each other, right? So let's see how to make use of how can we actually do that. So one thing which I was also going to introduce to us when we want to look into inputs, user inputs, right? Where you get user's inputs and then because of course you need to be able to get a user's input and do something with it, right? Now, one of the things that will help you do that is what we call a text editing controller, right? A text editing controller. So that's actually responsible for getting the input of the what user, right? Getting the input of the user. So let's just create an instance of that, right? Just do that here. So text editing controller. So let me just call it password controller, right? Text editing controller. Okay, so yeah, I think that's fine. Sorry, my system is lagging a bit, but yeah. Okay, so we're going to make use of this word controller, right, to access, the input of the what user, right? So that's basically that. So you can see if you can actually just go through this, right? The controller, this is just the controller for an editable text field. So whenever the user modifies the text field, it's an editing controller that's associated with it can update the value. In fact, you can use the controller to listen for changes in that input field to the text and know what the user has typed and a lot of use it to do some checks, right? Now, part of your text form field takes a controller. So let me just put that as the first thing here. So controller, right? And I'm going to pass in the password controller that we just created. Password control. I'm going to do the same thing. Yeah. So just going to pass it, you know. So yeah. So this is what I'm just going to do. So if we pass it here, it means we want to that kind of sort of two form fields should not just use. If you don't pass into the same controller into two form fields. But this is what I'm now going to do. So I'm going to use this password controller in this password text form field to get the input of the word user, right? And then in the confirm password, I'm now going to make a reference that particular word input and run a check. Okay, so for this, we could have a validator that says if the value, right, dot is empty, right, if the value dot is empty, or the value dot length, right, is less than 6. Now, we do not want a password that is less than 6 characters, right? We want something above 6. So I'll say return password must be at least 6 characters long. And I'll just add an exclamation mark just for emphasis, right? Yes, Billy, go ahead. No.
You use greater than instead of less than 6.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Less than 6. Thank you very much. Okay. Now so what do we now do? In our confirm password, we also need to do some more validation. And the only validation basically, right, that we need. In fact, since we are going to make use of the text that the user is going to type in the password, the first password that was actually imputed, we don't necessarily need to even check if it is empty, right? You don't necessarily have to, right? But of course, you can still do that, right? But let's just do that. So I'm going to say if value is not equal to the password controller, right? So I'm going to say password controller. So it's taking password controller dot text, right? So this dot text is what is going to assess the actual word input, right? So the password controller is more like just crossing away like an like it's just an instance and it's able to get the actual text that the user actually what types in. So what I say, if the value is not equal to the password that has been imputed, right? What we want to do, of course, we just say return passwords don't match. Right? So you see, I want to actually do don't, right? But because we are making use of single quotes, so there are two ways I can do this. I can decide to switch to using a double quote, right? So that I can use that single quote there, right? Or I can just, kind of use this to escape it, right? Passwords don't match. So you can either do this, right? Or you just put this whole thing, right? Use double quotes, right? And then with double quotes, you can now do your don't. That's if you want to kind of, you know, just cut things or and you don't want to say do not, right? Yeah, so that's that. And then going to return no, all else fails. Okay, so let's save that, right? Okay, so I'm going to click on submit, and of course, we haven't put a password there. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Remember, password should not be less than 6, and this is 5. 5 is less than what 6. So when I click submit, it shows me both of them because I've actually put in something now, right? So it shows me that they don't even match because yeah, I've not put in anything, right? So that's why I say you don't necessarily have to even check for it empty because it's basically saying that an empty thing is equal to something that has a value, which of course that's not the case. All right. So I'm going to just let's solve this first one to make sure that we're obeying the rule. So yeah, we've obeyed that rule. Of course, the passwords still don't match, right? So here, so let's now say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to submit. It still does not match. But when I say 6, so you can see it actually what matches. The error actually goes away, right? So yeah, that's actually that, right? So we are actually going to talk about user input at the same time because I'm talking about user input is basically being able to get what the user has actually imputed. But uh, let's actually, show that because when you're getting what the user has imputed, right, you basically use the controller and the controller actually stores that, but can we actually see it? So let's say, um, okay, so let me just create a text widget, right? And the text widget takes a string. Okay, text widget takes a string. So I'm just going to say password controller dot text, right? Very good. So you can see that basically what you type. So let's see. Um, okay, text widget. After they confirm, right? So let's see if we're missing out something. So let me just check. Let's confirm this. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so okay, good. Okay, so we can now get I can actually just even decide to print out just after on press. So let me just change this to just I basically just want to show you that you can actually get um what the user type. Okay, so and then I can just say print. Let's print Portuguese. Um, okay, no, passport controller. Okay, so part of clicking the button, right, is I want to, do some validation, right, and then I want to print what the user actually was typing in the password. So, um, yeah, so you can see here is empty, so it didn't show anything. So when I do, let's say 444, click on submit, so you can see it here, 444, right? Um, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is how you can actually get the user inputs, right? Of course, when you're doing that, we're doing std.dat and readline and that. But in Flutter, you can use controllers to actually get what the user actually was typed in to the text form field, right? So yeah, that's kind of that's basically that on forms, right? This class was not meant to be long, right? So that's actually what we're going to be covering for today. So do we have any questions? Any questions? There's a task that's actually going to go with this. Now, the task is not a promotional task, but it's something that you need to just try.
Okay, so I'm going to give you some validations, right? I'm going to give you some validations to do on your own, right? And of course, you're going to submit that, so you're going to submit an application, right? So I'm going to give you some validations to actually just try out on your own and then see what you can actually come up with. But yeah, so this is where we're going to round up the class. So let's take questions and then yeah, we round up. So questions. Dele, your hand is raised. Do you have a question, or probably it's the one you raised before? Okay. David, go ahead.
All right, thank you. These validations now that we've done on for each section of the text function, will there still be validation required on the back end?
Okay, so yeah, are you done?
Yes, I'm done.
Okay, so well, yes, of course, your backend can actually do some validations, right? But there are still some certain validations that you can actually just do by your own self, right? More like for will I use the word more like a double check kind of thing, right? Like for example, checking for empty string. Yes, the backend can actually decide that, look, I don't want to get an empty stuff, right? So you also have to make sure that from the front end, you are making sure that the user knows that an empty string is not expected, because the backend is just the backend. The user doesn't see the backend. So you're the one, kind of coding the front end for the user to know what is expected and what is not expected. So if the backend doesn't need, an empty string, you shouldn't even, you should write validations or functions or whatever to make sure that it does not even go to the backend, right? You need to make sure you do some check, right? That so that it does not actually want to go to the backend at all. Okay, so I don't know if that answers your question, David.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's a question on the chat. It says, why do some methods and variables have an underscore at the beginning? Does this have any significance? Okay, yes, actually. The essence of the underscore actually just means that this function or variable is actually a private one. So it cannot be accessed outside of this class. We can actually decide to, not use it. But of course, it means that when you create an instance or you call, you can actually make use of it. So it's just more like a private method or a private variable. Okay. Dele. Yes, Dele said we can use .trim to remove spaces. Yes, you can. You can. That was part of what that was
Is there a
actually gives you.
package?
Right.
Is there a
Yes.
package that we can use to validate emails? Because I remember when I did Node.js, we're using this package. What's the package name? To validate.
Yes. Yes. There are
Package
packages.
validate.
There are packages you can actually use, right? And I don't want to actually, I don't want us to go into using packages. I want us to get to understand, how certain things would work. Okay, so yes, there are packages you can actually use. In fact, the truth is when you get into some production level stuff, you may not actually have to write some of these codes. Okay, so someone said, why use a package where you could write them yourself? Well, I think I'll leave that debate to both of you. I don't want to be involved in that debate. Okay, so there's one more thing I actually think I forgot, but I think the questions have actually, kind of brought that out. Someone said, can I scroll to the top? Well, I'll give you guys access to this code, right? Of course, the video is going to be there. So there's one more thing I didn't do, right? And of course, I think I talked about it, custom validators, right? So you can actually create a custom validator to enforce specific rules. So basically, it's just going to be a function that will return a string if the input is valid or or null if the input is invalid, rather, if the input is invalid, or it will give null if it's valid. So the essence of that is we don't now have to, because assuming, let's say this email, right? This email validation, let's say we have like 5, 6, 10 files where we are validating emails. We shouldn't be, kind of writing this every time, right? So you can actually create a validation function, outside of this your file that will actually do, carry out validations, and all you just do is call. Sorry, all you basically do is just call the function and pass it in, right? So I could just have, okay, let me say, okay, let's just say I create a file. Let me just create a file, right? I could just say valid email.dart. Now, of course, when we start moving on, we'll get into talking about project structures and how to really arrange your code, right? So I could just create a function that returns a string. I'll call it validate email, right? Validate email. And it should take in a string value, a string called value, right? And so it's going to just do those checks for me. First of all, if the value is empty, if value dot is empty, which is basically what we were, checking, then it should return email is required, right? It should do another check for the regular expression, right? So let me just pick that here. I could just, let me just pick that here, and then okay, so what it should do, it should return enter a valid email. Else, all else fails, it should return what null. Right? So what I'm just going to do is kind of make this nullable. Okay, so what I'm basically going to do is, all I have to do now is just instead of having to type all these things, right? So in this validator, right, because it's expecting a function, all I'll just do is I can just say, okay, let me see, just cut this so I can say value validates. Okay, sorry. Here. Let's see where this. Okay, stops here. Okay, good. So validate email, right? Then just import it and then pass in the value. So that's actually what. So with this, it's actually what run the validation, right? So what happens is that with this, you can just create, what's it called? You can use this function everywhere, right? You can use this function everywhere without having to, kind of rewrite the code in 5, 6, 10 places that you probably may use, that regular expression. That's just the idea, right? So one of the things we'll learn as we move is to make sure that we kind of not repeat ourselves, right? It's called the dry, don't repeat yourselves. We'll try to componentize things. We'll try to create reusable functions, reusable widgets. Okay, those are two things that we will actually, what's it called? Learn as we move. Okay. Blessing, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, my point is more of a question, and it's more of something I discovered while doing the last task. I realized
Okay.
that if we use the background color across a specific widget or for the whole page, it's going to span through the page, even including the part that is supposed to be excluded. What I'm talking about is on your screen currently, the part that is showing the time and the apps and the battery is not supposed to be affected by the page color. That is the widget color. So I discovered there is something called safe area. I just wanted to ask, are there exemptions to when to use safe area, or it is best to use it, or is it one of the best practices to use it when developing apps that are going to production?
Okay, so it's all about design, right? What are you trying to implement, right? Well, safe area is something where I was supposed to bring that in. I think I'll be like next week, not now. But let me just brush through. Let me just brush through, the concept of safe area. Now, from here, let me see if I can get. Hold on. Let me get my annotation. Annotate. Okay. Yeah. Okay, good. So here, so Blessing, this is what you're talking about, right? So here, you said here is not supposed to be affected. That's what you're saying. You can see my screen, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. I can see your screen.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I just want to draw something.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, for example, this app bar within this scaffold, if we are to give this app bar a kind of decoration that has color, the color is going to affect the upper part of the part that you just drawn out with the red now. The upper part will be affected with the color that we are giving it. So, but I noticed that when I introduced safe area to my own environment, it prevented it from overlapping to that place where the time and other things are showing. So my question is safe area a good practice while developing apps, or there are exemptions to when it is to be used?
Okay, so it's not a good or bad practice. Safe area is actually a widget, right? And as I said, dependent on what you're designing, you basically use safe area to kind of avoid areas of the screen that might be obstructed by, there are what we call system UI elements, like your status bar and navigation bar, right? So what it does is that it kind of just ensures that the content is displayed within, a visible, interactable region of your screen. So let me show you what I mean. first of all, so we have this app bar, right? So probably let me just talk about it. We'll still implement it later on. So this is what you're saying. Now, this is your app bar, which is this area here. This is your app bar. Now, assuming I give the app bar a background color, let's say colors dots. Let me use a color that will shout so very well. I know, sorry, in case it blinds you. Right? So this is the whole of this, right? This is a status bar here, this place. So what you're saying is that this is affected whenever you're using your app bar, and that's kind of like a default behavior, right? Now, let me give, remember this is our scaffold. Our scaffold is basically just the whole of this place. Now, let me give our scaffold a background color. So this will actually help to see different areas of this. So let's say colors dot, since we have a black text, let me use yellow. Sorry, like I said, in case you'll be blinded by things, right? So you can see that this is your scaffold, right? And then now, but if I take out this guy and just try to refresh this, you can see, so your app bar, right? Your app bar is kind of in sync with your status bar, right? It's actually in sync with your status bar. Their default color, as you can see, is actually what? White. Now, the thing is this, when we talk about safe area, right? There are places in your screen that is kind of within, more like, we call it like an interactable region of your screen. Okay, now, of course, when you're using an application, basically it is from here down, right? You can have 3 dots, like a 3 dots. There's what we call an action. Let me see the time. Okay. So let me just talk about this. I could have, one of the properties of an app bar is what? Actions, where you can have a list of widgets, right? You can actually have a list of widgets. Did I spell that right? Okay, yeah, actions. Good. Now I could say, so let's look for an icons dot, let me see more, able to give us, I don't want this one, option. I'm trying to look for the one. I'm trying to remember the name of. Okay, yeah. Let's use menu. Let's just use menu, right? Let's see. So let's just use menu. So when I just save this, right? So you should see, you can see this icon here, right? So this is within where the user can interact. Now, as far as your application is concerned, you don't interact with this. This is a system UI, right? This is a system UI. It's part of your operating system, not part of the application that you're actually building, right? It's a system UI. Okay, so what your safe area widget does is basically, and why you should probably use it, like I said, sometimes it's just dependent on what you're trying to build and everything, but there's no good and bad reason why you should not use it or not. But basically, you use it to kind of avoid just areas of the screen that might be obstructed, by the system UI, right? Now, on devices that has some special screen features like let's say rounded corners, or maybe there's this edge to edge kind of display, or parts of the screen can actually be obstructed by an overlay, right? You can use this safe area widget to basically do to just calculate like a safe unobstructed area that will make sure your app's UI stays within the bounds of what it should kind of stay. So let's see, let me just wrap my body, this not my action, not my body, right? But the body of the scaffold, right? This center, so I can wrap it with the widget called seed area, right? And then just, so what happens is that this is now inside a safe area. It seems like it doesn't actually do anything, right? But so let's, kind of move stuff, right? So when you're now doing your interaction, right? When you're actually carrying out interactions, one of the things is that to avoid anything that will make sure that will make your UI or make when you're kind of doing something like a drop down, right? This is my device, so I don't want to, but something like this. It's just trying to bring out your system icons and all this stuff, right? It's just trying to make sure that your application will stay within bounds. There are actions like, let's say you want to, where your keypad, right? Your keypad comes up, right? When your keypad actually what comes up, in order for your application not to kind of, go over or kind of extend to points where you should not extend. That's basically what safe area widgets actually does. Just keeps your UI within areas that are safe, and the areas that are safe are basically areas that the user can easily interact with, right? There's actually a particular example I'm going to use, right? But that's actually not in this class. But when we get there, right, we'll use that. But just to answer your question, it's not bad, it's not good. It just depends on what design pattern do you want to follow, or does the application actually entail? Okay, Blessing. Hello, Blessing, are you there? Okay. Can anybody hear me? I think he dropped off. Okay. Okay, that's fine. Any other question? Any other question? Yes, David. David, go ahead.
Okay. Like I actually posted a question on the inbox. More like, can we hear feedback on the recent tasks that was done so far that was submitted, or comments?
Okay. Yeah, of course you can. It seems like you in particular, you want a feedback. you in particular, you want a feedback, right? So I kind of like to do feedbacks before classes start, right? But let me just give some generic stuff. Yeah. So yeah, good one. Some of you actually did a bit more research to, kind of implement stuff. Some of you missed out on a few instructions, right? For some persons, I think it was just one of their lists that was clickable. Now, the task was that you should use what you learned, the widgets you learned. Some of you just displayed a widget that just you only used text widget, and then maybe a container, and then of course you showed the dialog, but there was no image. I think about 2 persons or so, and that kind of took out a bit of mark for you, right? So basically what I'm going to say, generally speaking, you guys did well, but you need to be able to pay attention to details, right? When something is requested, when a task is given, you need to understand. First thing you should ask yourself is, what is the trainer expecting of me, right? What's the trainer expecting of me? That's 1. 2, what is the task expecting of me? There are 2 different things. There's something your trainer will expect, and there's something the task itself will not expect. Okay, so for the task, you have to be able to read through and understand. One of the things you should know is, when I give you a task, every word in that statement, that task, every word means something. Everything matters. So when I say use the widgets you learned, I taught you widgets, and I did not teach you 1 million widgets. I think it was just about 3 or 4. So use that with those widgets you learned to carry out the task. So some of you used all, some of you used just about two of it. There are about 3 persons that did not use an image widget, right? And the essence of using it is, I need to be sure that in as much as I have taught it, you can also use it, right? You can actually implement it. So pay attention to details. It's very, very, very important. Pay attention to details. Those tiny things that you feel, you probably missed out, maybe because you were rushing, right? That's one or two persons. Maybe that's your issue. Maybe you were rushing to meet deadline. And of course, if you are rushing to meet deadline, well, it means you did not really start on time. That's one of the reasons, which of course you could factor it into being maybe you were busy, but whatever the case is, right? Pay attention to details. That would actually help you, not just to help you generally, like in life. So, but for your feedback, I think you guys did okay, right? You guys did okay. At least you gave me, about 80 to 80% of what I was actually looking for. I think there's just probably one person or so who, yeah, I think just one person or so who who kind of did not give me or did something that I actually just knew that this one, probably this person that's going to watch YouTube video. Right. So I don't have issues with going to YouTube, right? Those are, of course, you get to see resources there that will help you with your task. But please, this is not a university. We are not here to carry firsts. You're not here to prove anything to anybody. You're here to learn and to know it for yourself, right? You're here to learn and to know it for yourself. So it is very, very, very important, very, very important that you kind of take your time, right? Take your time to understand these things rather than just, going online and then you just kind of you just see something there and you just follow, verbatim and then you submit. Yes, I may see it. I may decide just to overlook it and okay, well, the person has submitted, the submission is good, but that doesn't actually that doesn't help you in any way. I think one person, yeah, I've seen the person. I think I don't know. I'm not sure I want to mention name, but just know that if you scored 70 something, right? Yes, you missed out a widget, right? Yeah. So it's not because you don't know. You just missed out something. You did not follow the full instructions, and not following it can cost you marks. Okay, so that's basically that. Any other question? Any other question? Any other question? Any other question? Okay. Well, so in the absence of none, right? This is where we're going to. Okay, Pelumi, go ahead.
Okay, so concerning what you just said now about not following instruction, please, I would like to suggest that after every submission of tax, can you just please drop down your preferred code of preferred code so that we that do the tax should know that okay, next time once we see a tax like this is the way we should go through. It's just a suggestion, sir, so that at least when
I get, but I can't do that. Like I said, number one reason why I can't do that is, people don't submit at the same time. So of course, if I drop it, the people who have not submitted are basically just giving them something to just go and lift up and just do exactly and submit, right? That's why we can have, what we can have is review sessions where we'll talk about the concept or whatever, but not really the task. If you're having, if something is, what's it called? If you do something wrongly, I can now show you the right way to do it with maybe kind of another example, but not, dropping. There's no, like I said, I think I've addressed this. There's no preferred way. I don't have a preferred way, like best way. You understand, right? There are several ways, right? Someone can create a variable. So there's no I wouldn't say there's one best way. Of course, we learn about with time, right? With time, you will improve. This is just basically beginner level. So there are certain things that I can't, not really I can't, but I just want to introduce you to until we kind of probably get to the maybe way deep into the second month or third month, right? So we're going stage by stage. But we can have review sessions, right? And I like to handle that before, what's it called, the class. So I'm not if everybody submits, if this is when I can do that, assuming I give it the next task and I say the deadline is, let's say 15th. If after 15th I close submission and nobody ever submits again, then that's fine, but that's not the case. People still submit late. So if I drop that, then of course, like currently submissions came in for this current task. There's someone that just submitted past 10 this morning. You understand? So and somebody will still submit tomorrow. In fact, someone submitted the task 1, right, yesterday. Task 1 that has passed like since how long, right? Now, of course, in KodeCamp, we try to still, carry people along and everything. So if I do it that way that you want, right, I'm doing you and that person a disservice. I'm not helping that individual. And I'm also doing you a disservice. You understand? Because that person may, of course, the person may score higher, which of course the person will not, but it's just a disservice to both parties. So what we'll do, right? Let's see. Don't worry, I'll come up with something to satisfy you, right? But not with this particular suggestion of yours, but based on what you want, right? You basically need to know some certain best practices and, okay, fine, do it this way, do it that way. I'll look for something, right? I'll look for a way for us to, kind of do that, but not with the suggestion that you made. I don't know if you're okay with that, Pelumi.
I am, sir. I am.
Okay, so we'll work out something. Okay. Okay. So I think that's that, right? I think that is that. So I think there are just about 4 persons that needs to be graded. I'll do that immediately after this. Oh, I'll do that later, right? Not immediately after this class. I'll do that later. Okay, so guys, thank you very much. Let's have a wonderful week ahead. I'm going to drop the task for you. Now, I'm not dropping it on the learning management system. I'm going to drop it on the Discord, right? Like I said, it's not a promotional task. It's just something to, get your hands dirty. So you better do it because it's still going to link to your promotional task. So the earlier you start working on it and getting used to it, the better. Okay, it's for your own good. So I'll drop that on the Discord and then you can play around with that. So I think that's going to be that for me. Thank you very much, and let's have a wonderful week ahead.